You want to get started?
Let's do it.
Here, I don't know. Were you here when I did this? Drawing high card for intro?
No.
We got this Gerber deck here. We're going to draw a high card, and whoever gets the high card is going to do the intro. Like it's a reward.
Oh, really?
All right, pick your card. Oh my God, let's drop the whole freaking deck. Okay, ready?
Yep.
What do you got? 9.
Niner?
You're doing the intro, buddy.
I'm doing the intro?
This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, because that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag, you hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
Hey there, welcome back to the Okayest Hunter podcast. Eric is sitting here looking at me with a big shit-eating grin on his face because he just threw me under the bus and said, we're going to draw cards. And whoever gets the highest card in the suit gets to do the intro. And wouldn't you know it, I drew the old 9 and you got a 6.
Gerber sent us all these cards. We got decks of Gerber cards. I didn't even know they had decks of cards. Maybe it's so you can test how sharp your blades are. You can cut the cards.
Yeah.
That's a whole different meaning of cutting the cards right there. But I have the decks in here. Thought it'd be kind of fun to do something neat. Anywho, yeah, we're live. We're brought to you by Nosler. And if you haven't yet seen our Oregon blacktail hunt, then Greg's going to step out. You good? All right. If you haven't yet seen our Oregon blacktail hunt, then I highly recommend checking it out. It is on Carbon TV. It's also on YouTube. And there's a shot where Derek takes a 700-yard shot at a blacktail and gets it. And you can literally see the bullet on the video as it pans in front of the camera, like that heat signature, whatever that is, like that hazy kind of vibe or feel. Greg got a deer in that as well. It's a really cool film. It turned out great. The guys that worked on that are really talented. It wasn't me, so that's probably why it turned out so great. But anyway, Nosler had a big part in that. We also toured their factory when we went out to Oregon, and so you can actually see a little bit of the behind the scenes of like what goes on there to a small effect. There's a lot of areas we couldn't show on camera, but what we could, we did. So it's just kind of a neat thing. If you haven't checked it out, I personally recommend it, of course. I would, but we've heard some great feedback from everyone else that's watched it. 0 negative feedback across the board, and a lot of people have viewed it so far. So really exciting. We're hopefully going to do more of that type of thing, but just a lot of fun. Anyway, so that's that. And obviously talking about Gerber here, we're going to work with them a little bit more to do a giveaway of a custom Gerber knife. You can do customizations down to like really specific features of the blade, of like the clip, the blade itself, the handle, some of the screw colors, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what they're called, facets. Anywho, rivets, something like that. But you can customize the blades to a pretty ridiculous degree, and it'd be really fun to do a giveaway where we could give that to you guys and gals, our listeners, for you to customize one how you see fit. Something for Latitude that I want to talk about. They're going to be doing, I think, some sales here to kind of clear house and make room for the next wave of product, but this is a good time of year, and Greg would be the best one to speak to this, to like get your stuff on your workbench and just check for, get your Allen wrench out and check for things that you might need to tighten down or silence, get your stealth tape out, or, this is a pretty decent time of year to work on some stuff because there's not that much going on. It's not nice enough outside where you want to be outside. It's kind of crummy. Spring's a pretty shitty time of year, I think. I'm not a big fan of spring. So it's a good time to tinker and do some fun stuff.
You're kind of poo-pooing on like one of the coolest times of year, really.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on who you are.
Dude, all the waterfowl are coming back. They're in full plume. You can see the colors. They're awesome.
There's benefits, but spring is my least favorite of the 4
there's
seasons.
Some fishing. So. There's, go out and trout fish, go out and walleye fish. I mean, there's...
Well, the shed hunting is the other thing you can be doing. And that might be...
Participation trophies are cool, I guess, but it's... Yeah, whatever. Habitat work. It's a good time to do some habitat work.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Now that we've got enough rain that we're not lighting the entire lower half of the state on fire, it's kind of nice to maybe you can go out and burn some areas, burn some areas.
Yeah, it's a good point. You got land.
if you got land to do some work on.
We're going to talk a lot about that in
Yeah.
a little bit with our guest. Before we do bring our guest on, what I was going to say about the shed hunting too is the Rack Hub stuff. Like if you haven't checked out Rack Hub yet, by the way, you need to check them out. There's a lot of competition happening in that space because people realize it's really cool to put antlers on the wall. I think Rack Hub is like one of the first movers there, and we're seeing some other alternatives come up, which is great. There's plenty of room for everybody to do stuff.
You can't eat the horns.
You can't, but when you find them, it's a really cool way to display them. So, Quick Trip just launched a brand new their own brand of chips is called Urge.
We're partaking in this.
Listen,
so
limited time flavor. Okay,
limited.
Just came out today. It's going to be in stores this week, so we might be one of the first to get our hands on this bag. It's gas station roller dog is the flavor, and not just any gas station roller dog. It's Quick Trip gas station roller dog, hot dog flavored potato ripple chips, hot dog flavored chips. This reminds me of Limp Biscuit, hot dog flavored water.
Yeah, chocolate starfish and a hot dog flavored water.
All right, you can try one with me here.
The sniff test. Yep, they'll pass muster, I think.
I'm gonna wait till you get one out. Here we go.
Here we go. Cheers.
It's crunchy. We're not gonna be doing that on podcast the whole time, I promise.
Actually, that's not bad.
That's pretty good. I could eat that whole bag.
Mm-hmm. Almost as good as like all dressed or ketchup chips from Canada.
It's really good.
Not quite as good as those, but
oh, Jesus!
I can taste the ketchup and the mustard and the roller dog.
That's fun. I don't know what I would dip that in. Something. I like it. Well, that bag's gonna be gone by the time we're out of the studio tonight. I'll tell you that right now.
Yep.
Let's bring our guest on. We got Doug Duren on the line with us. On the line, what is this? 1982.
Yeah.
Doug's here with us. What's up, Doug? How you doing?
I'm on the video, as I like to say. I'm on the video. I'm doing good, man. And I want everybody to know that I didn't get a memo from you guys to wear a red plaid shirt, but as it turns out, that's what I did. So aren't we all outdoorsy?
We're just a bunch of Wisconsin guys.
Yeah,
this time of year. We sold a lot of red plaid flannels at the trade show we saw you at over the weekend.
Oh yeah,
those were a hot commodity. Literally,
it was a good show, man.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people.
Well attended.
Yeah, very well attended. The booth was a happening place. Thanks for everybody for stopping by. Doug even stopped by. It was great.
Yeah. I remember one year, Doug, you stopped by and someone's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Doug Duren." And you're like, "Yeah, here I am."
Yeah. Well, what else do you say? Yep.
It was pretty great.
Yep.
That still happens, and I mean, it's super fun when it does, and it's gratifying and sort of humbling and everything all at the same time, you know. And and it happened there again. I had a couple of kids following me around for a while. I guess they wanted to see what I was going to buy, and the only thing I bought was a dog hair picker upper.
A lot of people bought that thing. That thing, it's wild how many people are walking around with that dog hair picker upper thing. I don't know what it's called.
I don't either, but he has a heck of a presentation. He convinced me to get it, and pink handle and all. So, yeah.
It's exciting. Well, it's been a minute since I think you've been on the show or since we've interviewed you. I know we were at the farmhouse that one year, and you've probably been on here remotely a time or two. And, we got some things to talk about around conservation, land access policy, local stewardship, and CWD and so forth. But maybe just kind of talk about what you've been up to over the last, I don't know, year or so. Like what's kind of happening in your world locally and maybe regionally.
Oh man, the last year. So what month is it now? So first April Fools, right?
Yeah.
A lot. We did. We started a partnership the fall before with Can-Am, and great company, great machine, all of that, and really like working with them. And we planned and implemented a turkey hunt in the spring, and we're doing another one this year with them at the end of May. So we'll be doing that along with our other regular turkey hunt that we do with, our regular hunting together. That We have a group of women that come and hunt, that Lindsay kind of runs that whole program. And I've got some folks coming, and I just sneak out by myself some. So turkey hunting is on my mind right now, as it is, I imagine, on everybody else's as well. And but the other thing that has really been going on for me is there's been a lot going on the farm. We can talk about that as much as you want or don't. But we've been doing a lot of. I've been putting together a lot of conservation projects, and those are more and more coming to fruition. Everything from pollinator habitats to timber stand improvement to we're actually going to be. We just started work on a grassland rehabilitation and savanna project on the farm. So, that's pretty cool. And some of the folks helping us with that, oddly enough, are my sharing the land cooperators. And it's been a big year for sharing the land. We just got back, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago from Pheasant Fest, which is always our biggest event of the year. It's the one that we always attend. And at that, we met a lot of folks, picked up a couple of landowners, picked up a bunch of access seekers, and it sort of keeps moving, sharing the land forward. I got to play music with Muskie, Chet, and the Keepers at the Concert for Conservation, and great stuff. Just getting together with all kinds of great people that we recognize out there in the outdoor industry. Ryan Callahan being one of them from Meat Eater, and Muskie Chet, who's also from Meat Eater, but Ed Anderson, the artist, and Josh Crumpton from Spoke Hollow Outfitters, and Reed Bryant from Orvis, and just lots of folks who I've become friends with over time with Pheasant Fest, and all the people at Pheasants Forever are fantastic. So we look forward to that every year, and it's a great thing. We picked up sponsorship, but we also, the big thing with sharing the land is I wrote some numbers down here before I came on, and hopefully I can find them now.
Before you share those numbers, for those who don't know, I know what it is because I've kind of been following along, I think, since the last Doe Derby I attended up at the farm. What is the Sharing the Land initiative? What is it all about?
Well, thanks for prompting that. I spend too many, I do too much of just like launching into what's happening versus what it is.
Guilty as charged. I do the same thing. So.
Yeah, man. So Sharing the Land is a private land access initiative that is modeled after something that Elda Leopold did back in the 30s called the Riley Game Cooperative. And it's as simple as thinking about bartering. It's people making a contribution to conservation, and willing landowners are then allowing them onto their property. There's a whole process involved. We have landowners that sign up and their property in whatever way that they would like to, or whatever access they're willing to allow, and what they'd like to see in exchange for it. Some landowners want people to come out and do some work. Others are like, I would like to reward people who are making a significant contribution to conservation in some other way, like volunteering for things like the Conservation Congress or the CDAC, or they're volunteering for Pheasants Forever or NWTF or something like that. And in response to that, they build a conservation resume. Those access seekers build a conservation resume, and it's a fillable form on our website. And this is really the tool that we help people connect with landowners with. And so the idea is that we're formalizing the idea of the old, do some work for me, make a contribution to conservation, and in exchange for that, I'll grant you X access, whatever that happens to be. For hunting, of course, but others are for foraging, it's for camping, hiking, bird watching, all kinds of different things that people might be interested in. So it's a wider net than just hunting, but hunting, of course, is at the core of it. So it's Conservation Cooperators Network, and we connect landowners, willing landowners, with access seekers, a process that we have. Is that a good enough explanation?
That's a great explanation. I mean, basically works like a network conservancy, really, where people can do all of those activities and enjoy the property. Maybe they're not hunters, but at the time of year that they want to go bird watching, maybe they're, picking up some garbage or they're pulling some invasives or something to help contribute and make that property better.
Yeah, and it's really in response to the need for more private land access. And, the thing that we first think about, I think I've told this story before, we were trying to kill some more does on our property. And after opening weekend, in the first 3 or 4 days, people left. And all of a sudden I'm sitting out there by myself, and I ended up shooting 7 does one afternoon. And because we were really trying to reduce the deer herd. And for those of you who've not shot 7 does in one afternoon, it becomes a lot of work. And that's one of the things, right? So all of a sudden I'm field dressing 7 deer, I'm loading them into the back of the truck, I'm hauling them in, I'm hanging 2 for myself, and I'm taking 5 to the donation program. And all of a sudden it became a lot of work. And the other part of it was that I didn't feel good about is that I was becoming a deer exterminator. So you combine those things. I'm like, well, why am I not inviting more people onto this property to have that opportunity? I have told several people who I've granted permission to, when they said, well, I want to come and help you with something. I'm like, you will make a contribution to conservation on my farm in this area simply by coming and shooting an antlerless deer and getting it tested for CWD and taking care of that carcass and consuming if that's appropriate. So it can be that kind of stuff. We have one of our Wisconsin landowners. He just wants people to be grateful. And he kind of sees that gratitude by the folks who are on his property, not only in the little bit of work that they do for him. In fact, they do all kinds of work for him, but he's just like, here's a guy with some kids who's looking for a place to hunt. He doesn't have the wherewithal to do it. They came out, they were respectful. They were on time. They were, they had good manners, all of that kind of stuff. And that was really all he wanted from them. Other landowners are like, I'd really like to get this, and this done. And the conservation resume, when an access seeker fills it out, they put on there sort of their conservation ethos, but then also the skills and abilities that they have. We have one landowner who's thrilled to have one of the access seekers he's a certified burn boss. So you were talking about, prescribed fire, and this guy does that for them. Well, what a great thing for them, right? What a great thing for that landowner. And they had that on their cooperating land profile, that they were looking for somebody with prescribed fire. And when we built out the system, which is one of the things we did in this past year, the back end of the website, we now have a matching system that kind of matches people up based on location, based on the needs of the landowner. And so it ranks people and what their skills and abilities are. And so that's what we're doing. The truth of the matter is we have 38 different landowners with 40 different properties in 14 states, and we have 1,500 access seekers, and they don't all match up, you know what I mean? So as you might imagine, that there's a lot more demand than there is supply. And so we've been really working on honing our message and then going towards areas where we have more access seekers, and how can we get in there and see if we can convince some more landowners to participate in this program. And so that's been a big part of our focus. And in the past year, we have a number of sponsors, and we actually picked some more up at Pheasant Fest, but we decided in the past year, in conversation with different people, that it would behoove us to become a nonprofit organization. So we are in the process now. We kicked that off this year. And so sometime in 2025, we will be a nonprofit organization. And so that'll allow us to, tap into some more funding. Because the truth of the matter is, you guys both know Lindsay. She's really she's the brains of the operation, but she's also she's getting a part-time salary and working on it full-time, it seems like. So we're trying to build that up, and we're going to have to hire some other people for some of the other work as well. So It's really exciting because after 3 years, we're in our third year now, we have really proven the concept that it works. Those numbers they get people's attention. That many properties with, and it's over 10,000 acres in private land that's been opened up in some way to people. One of them is one of the properties I would tell you about, without getting too specific about it, but it's out in Wyoming, and it's a ranch that is under the conservation of a big organization, and they allow people to access that property. But what they were looking for from us was a way to help them gather information about the people who are going to come and access, rather than simply a phone call that they were having to deal with or an email. What they've instructed people to do who are interested in it is to fill out a conservation resume, note that they want to go to this particular property, and then it comes to us, and there's no requirement for them to do anything, but we pass that along to the folks at that property, and now they've built a portfolio of, rather than just phone numbers and names, but a portfolio of conservation resumes of people who can come and help them when there is a volunteer day that they set up. So it's kind of we're adjusting it based on the needs and the things that we've learned from landowners. So that's where we're at, and it's really exciting, and it's also a lot of work, and but it was something that we committed to, and proof of concept is everything. I know you guys know about that. You started this program, and well, I don't know how it's going to go. And you put you lean into it, and you do the best you can, and see if see how it goes. And like with you guys, our thing is going really well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's really powerful because there's so much, like you said, there's a lot of work to do it, but there's a lot of work that's going. I'm trying to phrase this in a way that makes sense, but like there's work happening on land because of it, and good work.
And gone are the days of going up to a farmer and getting permission anymore for going and helping baling hay or fixing fences or any of that stuff. I mean, I got lucky with my situation because it was a problem with too many deer on the land.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to come, and I'm not as cool as Doug. I didn't shoot 7 in a day, but I've shot 4 in a day and stressed them out by myself, put them in the truck by myself. It is a lot of work. But to keep getting that permission, that was like the ask of me was to shoot deer when you're there.
Yeah. Steve Ranella said to me one time when we were talking about this right after we first met, he said, I lived in Michigan when I was a kid, and it seems like we spent 75% of our time getting permission and 25% of our time hunting.
Yep.
And so we're trying to simplify that process. And, it obviously ties right into the whole R3 idea that, okay, if we recruit hers, do we teach them how to hunt, and then we just drop them off at the end of the recruitment thing, and now what do? They need to be learning about conservation. So conservation education is a part of it, community is a part of it, cooperation is a part of it, inclusion is a part of it. And so it's a much wider net than hunting, and that's one of the things that we've really discovered. Central focus, starting with hunting, but it's been a really interesting thing to hear from landowners and access seekers who say things like, having the access is great, and it's the end result, and that's fantastic. But some of the most enjoyable times I've had is when I have come out there, and I know I'm making a contribution to the betterment of that land and the betterment of that habitat. And that feels really good. Like it's even more important than the access to. And then that idea that we're, and you're doing it with a group of people. I mean, when I try not to just talk about the stuff that we do on my place, because there are all these other places where we're doing it. And there's a video coming out with one of our sponsors, Savage, that'll be coming out. I think it's out this week. And it's about sharing the land. And we interviewed 4 of our landowners and a handful of access seekers who talked about that relationship and why they enjoy it, and why it's important to them and why it speaks to them. My personal conservation mantra of "it's not ours, it's just our turn." This is a part of that. I think about this a lot now that I'm older, and I guess it just sometimes things happen. So I'm 66 years old, and I think about legacy, right? And the legacy of our land. And, part of the reason I thought about, or why I spit that mantra out one day, was because I was thinking about the past while we were doing planning and implementing in the present for the best thing for the future. Coming back from Pheasant Fest, Lindsay was riding with me, and I looked over at her at one point and I said, we could die on this. I mean, I could slide off the road and die today, and the farm's still going to be there. And conservation is still going to need to happen. And somebody's going to pick up that, and we have it in place on our farm that it will be picked up by some of my siblings and the next generation. But that kind of thing, the continuum of it all, and the cooperative nature of it, I think is what is the most attractive part to me. And I know that's one of the biggest reasons people are interested in it.
It's really special when you, I don't not make this sound cheesy, but when you touch the land, and harvesting an animal is one way to do that, and observing them and harvesting them and all that is really good. But I took my daughter to volunteer on a Waukesha County Land Conservancy property in Heartland. They have a whole bunch, but that one was close. It was a good opportunity. Timing worked out. So I brought my daughter, and we helped cut invasive species. It was like buckthorn or something like that. And you get the dauber of the pesticide or whatever it is, and you daub the end, you just clip, and you just clear all the stuff out. We had worked through so much. And now when we drive past, my daughter's like, that's that spot that we went, right? I'm like, that is the spot we went. And we did something that seemed like work, because it was, and fairly insignificant, but the memory that now we're kind of like attached to that, and you can't actually hunt that property. That property is not available to hunt, sadly, because I would love to get there. I'm like, come on. But
there's a lot of deer in that area.
There's just so much more to it. And it's, so OK Center donates revenue to that organization, and we also volunteer our time to that organization. It's very low-cal to us, so it's something we can actually commit to doing. But when you work the land, like Greg's out there chopping down trees on some property, you just feel different about it. Like, I did something to that property. It's like, I don't know what movie it is when, what is this? Who's the guy? Leonardo DiCaprio is pointing at the TV like, oh, I know that guy or whatever. It's like, oh, I know that property. I did something there. Yeah. But that's where I got that here. It feels special. It's different.
It would, and I wouldn't underestimate that impact on your daughter or anyone that you do this with, because it is lasting, and she will remember that. But that you're right. It's that you're touching the land and you're doing something to it. There's the old expression about hunting is conservation, and I kind of push back on that a little bit. I mean, obviously, if somebody coming and killing a doe on my place when I'm wanting to reduce the deer herd, that is conservation, right? But first and foremost, hunting is extraction, right? You're taking something from the land. Whereas you and your daughter were there doing that work, and you were doing something for the land, and you were putting into the land. And I think that's really powerful. I know that personally, not only on our farm, but man, when I was a 21-year-old kid who was trying to figure out what he was going to do with his life, I worked for a reforestation company. And a few years ago, when I was back down into that area, man, I was like trying to figure out exactly where, because I wanted to see the trees that we planted 40 plus years ago, and I did find a couple of spots. Work that I did when I lived in New Hampshire and in the mountains out there, that was, we were being paid to do trail work and stuff. But I mean, I think about those places all the time, and those are special places to me, into them. So, and I think that's an important message well, I think it's a part of your guys' message too. It's not like all about the big giant bucks. It's about the entire experience, and conservation and putting something in is a part of the experience.
Yeah, it totally is. Anyone that's having a bad day, the best way to have a good day is to just go help someone. That could be true to the land too. Go work the land. Go do something. You never feel. A walk never made anything worse. Going to do something like plant a tree and those types of things. it's good for you because we're attached to this land. Like we're part of it. We're part of an ecosystem, whether we like it or not. And it's kind of where we're meant to
leaving
be.
your DNA everywhere you go.
It's so exciting. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
different.
that's a little weird, Greg, but
I do bleed a lot out on the
sweat,
land.
and tears, man.
but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Here's another example, and I know you guys have younger kids. My daughter's 28 years old, and when she was a senior in high school, we were re-enrolling in CRP. And one of the projects that we had to do as a part of that was to plant pine trees. So I have these wonderful pictures of her and my wife and this friend of ours, Tyson Hall, riding in the tree planter. You know, they pull behind the tractor and they're putting trees in the ground, and they're those little 18-inch white pine seedlings. And now, 10 years later, those trees are 20 feet tall. And my daughter just marvels at that. One of the again, I don't know if I'm just thinking bumper stickers or what, but one of the things that I said is, well, plant trees grow memories. And she remembers that, like her very serious boyfriend. I can't get into the details on that. That's not true. Hell, I think there's going to be a wedding in the Duren family soon.
All right.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I think, I don't have full confirmation on that, but there's some discussions going on. But I mean, she brings this dude out, and she's like, one of the first things that she said was, I want to show you these trees that I planted.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I mean, those things are really powerful. Those kinds of connections are really, really powerful. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a piece of family property. It can be on that public land that, you know, and maybe you fight a little harder for that public land if you've done some stuff out there too. And now somebody wants to, they want to sell it and develop it or something. So I think all of those kind of connections are super important. And so good for you guys for, doing that stuff with your kids. That's, I mean, I just kind of stumbled into a lot of this stuff where it seems like you guys are doing it intentionally. And I that's one of the things that we've done with sharing the land is like, oh, it took me a long time to figure out we need to be more intentional about this stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then when the other people start to stumble into it, or if they're intentional or not, it's just a very positive impact. And it's what you're doing, becoming a not-for-profit is very different than there's for-profit companies that are very VRBO centric or Airbnb centric. This is quite different, and the whole aspect of volunteering your time and so forth is good. But the other part of your particular area and the nucleus of that is like, I remember you telling us about the gentrification of that particular area where most of the landowners don't occupy that area. They're from elsewhere. And therefore the deer aren't getting hunted because mostly they're after the guys and gals that might own those properties are really trophy hunting, which is fine. But you're in a CWD hotspot. And when you're killing 7 deer on your property, that's not normal for a lot of other areas, at least in this state and maybe elsewhere in the country. And so what I'm getting at is a little bit of that. There's also a need because there's such a large population of does. I remember when Greg and I were out for the doe derby a couple of years ago, and we were driving home, and we couldn't count the deer in the field. 50, 60, 70. It was like,
yeah, you drive
oh my gosh,
another 2 miles and there's another field full.
It was wild how many deer there really were. And so I know the internet has broken down physical barriers in such a way that I think that's where some of the shaming comes from, that we try to help, curtail a little bit or mitigate. And so what I mean by that is someone in Wisconsin might dog on someone in Florida for shooting a small deer. It's like, well, it's Florida. That's as big as the deer get, or Arkansas or whatever, or like the big body deer with the small rack. Well, that's Maine. They don't get big racks up there, but they're big deer. And, CWD is not a problem. Well, that maybe not for you and where you are, but that doesn't mean it's not coming for you. And certainly even in this state, in Wisconsin, it might not be a problem somewhere, but boy, oh boy, where you live, it is a real big problem. And the fact that you're inviting people out to share the land and help with that, I think there's correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's a literal two-prong approach, but there's this byproduct that's happening that's helping solve another problem in what you're doing, at least in that area.
Well, as my father used to say, it's all a part of it, right? I mean, it really is all a part of it. That I was on the Meteor podcast last summer with Carl Malcolm, and at one point, Steve brought up this point that he always likes to bring up when I'm around because he knows it gets my goat. And that is, well, as far as hunters are concerned, there can never be too many deer. And I'm like, okay, that might be true with a lot of hunters, but clearly I'm a hunter and there is a thing. And of course, there's all of the National Deer Association models that show us that if you want to have big, healthy bucks, I mean, if you're in a big, giant bucks, then you need to, there's all kinds of reasons to reduce that herd. And then Carl Melkin was on there with me, and he goes, I said, well, but there can be too many deer. And he goes, no, it's subjective. And Carl said, no, it is objective. Now, Carl is a PhD ecologist, so when he speaks, Steve's going to listen versus he's going to argue with his buddy Doug, right?
Yep.
Well, you got to consider the source.
Right.
And Carl then quoted Leopold on a couple of things, but he also, the thing that is right when it tends to continue the biotic community, and it's wrong when it does not. That preserves the beauty, the integrity, and of the biotic community. It's wrong when it's not. And he said, no, it is objective, 100% objective. Deer are doing damage to the landscape. In areas of high population, deer are doing damage to the landscape. It's been noted, it's been studied, it's very true. And then you bring in this specter of CWD, which is a whole nother thing. It's like, well, wait a minute, we want to have a healthy deer herd too. And how do those things come together? I'm kind of the opinion that, folks, I'm not a biologist. I'm a guy who's grew up on a farm, who has an animal husbandry experience, has animal husbandry experience in a lot of years. And I tend to listen to scientists and then make my own judgments from there. So I can give you my experience and my perspective. Better off to talk to some biologists about the technical parts of the science and whatnot. But on the farm, when we crowded too many cattle together and one of them got sick, they all got sick. Mm-hmm. So how do you combat those sort of things, right? So those are the kinds of experiences that I bring to it. So with CWD, here we are in an area where, south of us especially, but we can talk about the progression of the disease too, south of us especially, where it started, where it was first identified, first discovered, and those areas are now experiencing lower deer numbers and a younger age structure. And part of the reason for that is because a big part of the reason is that the disease wasn't controlled. And we could, I don't know how much history of CWD in Wisconsin you want to rehash, but part of the reason that we quit trying to manage for it, was people were like, well, Jesus, the percentage is only 1 or 2%. What's the big deal? Well, part of the reason the prevalence was low is because of the management that was happening, right? And my daughter actually is a public health professional, and she works with epidemiologists. And one of the smartest epidemiologists I ever met said, yeah, when we're doing our job, people tend to think, well, what's the big deal? Because the disease has been, whatever disease it is or whatever virus it is, has been suppressed, right? We kind of like to stay behind a curtain and help to suppress those sort of things. And so it's one of those things has always kind of stuck in my head also. So you have a disease that, again, how much time you want to talk about what chronic wasting disease is, but you have a communicable disease that spreads animal to animal, and from the time it's contracted to the end of that deer's life is about 2 years. So a doe, for instance, is going to be able to replace herself, in some cases, multiple times, right? Even if she got it as a doe fawn, she might replace herself 3 or 4 times. If she gets it older than that, she would. So it's going to take a long time before you see an impact on the herd. And now 10, 12 years after we quit trying to suppress the disease, because hunters heard what they wanted to hear, which is don't worry about it. And, it's going to top off at 4 or 5%. Well, how did that work out? And then the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they would take the power away from the Department of Natural Resources to control it and manage the herd. So managing numbers manages the herd. Managing numbers manages the disease. Lower numbers, less disease, maybe older deer. And now what we're seeing in that area is CWD is, and if you I'm sure many of your folks that are listening have read the Southwest Predator and CWD study, and the conclusions are clear. You get into that 25% prevalence range, it's going to have an impact on your deer herd. So the question becomes, do we want to, as hunters, have a say in that? Or are we just going to let CWD do all its work, do all the work of herd control? If CWD does it, it will be a smaller herd and it will be a younger herd, and it will happen over time, and it just keeps moving north. If we are involved with it, we can have some say in the control of the disease. We can have some say in what that herd looks like, we being the hunters, obviously. I'm afraid the genie is out of the bottle here. I mean, my township now, where we still have really good numbers of deer, but not like when you guys were over here, prevalence is, or I shouldn't say prevalence, percent positive of deer tested was 43% this year. In all age classes. The older the deer, the higher the chances were, 50, 60% of the older deer were positive. But we had fawns that were testing positive. Well, even a fawn that tests positive is still going to be 2.5 years old before it dies from the disease. But again, over time, that's going to reduce it's going to drop the age of the deer herd, and older deer become less and less. I once heard a guy say, and I thought it was pretty smart, he wasn't a scientist or anything, he goes, it's kind of like Dutch elm disease, huh? There's still elm trees around, but you don't see old ones very much anymore.
No, you don't.
That's a good way to think about it.
And the ones that you see are way off by themselves somewhere. And when they die, those are the first ones you check for morels.
That's right. You weren't supposed to share that.
Everyone knows that.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, and by the way, cheers, fellas. One of the things that did happen also in this past year is I went to the Cape Verde Islands in Portugal. My wife and I went there for almost a month, and I developed a liking for Portuguese wine.
It looks delicious. Nice. It sounds delicious. I'd probably develop that same liking. By the way, my ADD just kicked in for 2 seconds. What instrument do you play when you play in the band that you play in?
I play the guitar, kind of, and I sing, kind of. It's sort of, it's just good fun. I host an open mic at the Branding Iron Roadhouse. We just fired it back up again. We had a really nice group on Sunday, and so if you go on my Instagram or on the Branding Iron Roadhouse, you'll see once a month on a Sunday afternoon we're doing this. And cool. It's fun playing guitar, and I'm not good at it. I went to the Hound Dog Taylor School of Music. That is that I can't play shit, but I can make it sound good. So
you're having fun doing it. That's what.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of it, right? I mean, at this point in my life, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. And
this other stuff you're doing that we're talking about, it has to have some level of fun, or at least quenching your thirst for, the knowledge around the stuff. Because the way you carry your knowledge, not being a biologist, is quite impressive. For someone to take this level of interest in it, who's just a guitar playing Midwestern farmer fella.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't think you sounded terrible after the Doe Derby. The last time I was up there with John Stelflew and the rest of the gang, we spent the night there and sat around. You were picking the guitar and singing. It was great.
Oh, well, you know what? I think that not sounding terrible is pretty much my goal.
Nice. Cool. That's a good goal.
Nothing wrong with mediocrity,
No. Yeah, you're talking to the most mediocre brand there is in the whole category.
Well, so there we are.
Know your audience.
And that, that again is a part of it. I never thought that it was something that I was going to do, to try to make a living or anything like that. But it is. There's this old Harry Chapin song called Mr. Tanner, and there's a line in the song that music was his life. It was not his livelihood. It made him feel so happy. It made him feel good. He sang from his heart. He sang from his soul. He did not know how well he sang. It just made him whole.
I like that. It was his life, not his livelihood. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're right. A lot of bumper stickers here.
Yeah, well, that's right.
No, I like how you kind of said, and whether it was you or where you got it from, but your explanation was really good. There was a particular point I want to call out, but if I would have mentioned it at that moment of time, I would have interrupted you. But now the thought has kind of faded a little bit. But there is this like question or this narrative to what you were explaining from the hunting population of like, well, if it's impossible to kill a prion and to deal with, then what is it that we're actually doing? And the way you articulated, it's our ability to have a say in how the herd performs or how we manage that herd. And if we did let it run its course, then we just don't have that say. So mitigating it does then have an impact, one that we don't have full control over. But it's like, this is not going to be a good analogy. I'm usually good at analogies. I just don't understand it well enough. But it's something along the lines of like, I mean, if someone's got the gas pedal, maybe I can have the steering wheel. You know, maybe I'm not in the driver's seat, but at least I can put a hand on the steering wheel and control that we're not going to go off the freaking road. If CWD's got its foot on the gas pedal.
Well, yeah, I don't know how far I could take that analogy, but I appreciate the attempt, and I agree. It's like there are these other parts of it. Left to her own devices, Mother Nature is going to do this, and that is we are going to have a smaller, younger deer herd, and from a demographic standpoint, it's going to be pretty much reflective of what's out there. You know, right now, but if we do things like, I was explaining this to a bow hunter friend of mine the other day, because, you know, and he asked me about, well, if you're reducing the deer herd dramatically, and I'm talking about dramatically, going from 60 or 65 deer down to 25 or 30 per square mile, whether that'll control the disease or not, I don't know, but let's get there and see. And when I say control, we're never going to get rid of it, folks. I understand that. We are not going to eradicate it. So the end game is mitigate. The end game is management. The end game is reducing the instances of it. It's reducing the prevalence. It's reducing the percent positive. In parts of southern Richland County that used to have percent positive up in the high 30s and low 40s like we have now, it's now down in the 20s. And part of the reason for that is the deer herd is a lot smaller. So it makes sense, right? Like any communicable disease, if the deer are spread out and they're not, you know, interacting as much, and we don't know what the load is, there's just so much that we don't know, but I do know that the more that we can do to reduce the unnatural congregation of deer. And this is where people on the other side of this discussion will say, well, deer are the lickinest, snortingest, you know, they're always getting together licking each other and doing all this. And so, okay, but that's natural behavior, like licking branches and grooming and all of that. Unnatural behavior is a salt lick in the ground that's this big hole that then holds water, and they're all sticking their nose in there. And we don't know what the load is. So really the idea of like the baiting ban and that sort of stuff is to eliminate, hopefully, unnatural congregation versus natural. We can't do anything about the natural congregation, but we can about the unnatural. So here's another bumper sticker for you, Eric. Doing what you can with what you've got where you're at. Mm-hmm. And I've accepted the fact that we're not going to eliminate it. I mean, my God, 43%, almost half of the deer that we killed on our farm last year tested positive. My entire township was 43%. I'm just waiting for the rest of the fire to kind of come through. And what I'm trying to do, and maybe what we're doing is, you know, throwing buckets of water at a raging house fire rather than having a fire truck there, really blowing water on it, which is what Ernebuck was. But we're again doing what we can with where we're at with what we've got. And I still have nice bucks on my place. And I think I will continue to. Now, I killed a 4-year-old buck last year. As soon as I shot him, before I shot him, I knew he was positive, just by the way he was acting. He looked nice and healthy, but as he was walking across the field during it was the opening day of the gun season, which was still in the rut. He was just walking across the field like he was going to the bank or something. He just didn't have, a 4-year-old buck at that time of the year ought to be head up and down and moving along and, being involved. He was just slowly walking across the field. And we didn't kill a buck. We didn't kill a deer that was older than 4 or more years older last year that didn't test positive.
Yeah, I think you gave me the analogy years back, or Greg and I, of like the young bucks are by and large. This is not entirely related, but I just remember the analogy of the young bucks are the ones out, courting, chasing all the does, and they're the ones that typically would be spreading more so than an older one.
Well, true enough. And then the other part of it, of course, is once you have the disease in a family unit, an old doe's got it, she's going to spread it to everybody in her family unit. Mm-hmm. So it's both a density population, and there's going to be people who are going to argue with you about this, that, well, it's not a density-dependent disease. And I'm like, on what planet does a communicable disease not spread faster in a larger population? I mean, give me an example. You put a bunch of people into a bar. Let's use people. I love using people as analogies. So you got a big bar full of people and nobody's sick. Cool. Okay. But maybe you run out of drinks, I don't know, run out of habitat or whatever. Now you get a couple of people in there who are sick, who have some sort of, virus or whatever. And now the chances are that the people immediately around them are more apt to get sick. Now, if those couple of people, let's say they're real friendly, they get a couple of drinks in them and they're sick, and now they're walking around and everybody's their buddy. This guy in the bar. He's putting his arm around you. He's talking to you, hey, buddy, and he's spitting on you, and all that. That's his behavior. So all of a sudden you add that behavior to it. So you got density, and then you have behavior, and behavior is the frequency-dependent part of the thing. So CWD is either there's always been this argument about it being frequency-dependent and density-dependent, and I think the evidence shows it's both.
How can it not be both? Of course it is.
Well, how can it not be both? I mean, again, again, the disclaimer, I am not a scientist in all this, but I have talked to a lot of them about it. And I do know that some get married to an idea, and because that's what their research was about, right? And so sometimes it's difficult to convince them of something otherwise, but I'm just looking at it I'm just trying to be logical about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the there's just, and we can move on because there's some other things I think you want to get to, and that I want you to get to because I want to hear it too. But it's just a controversial topic. Controversy is rather annoying these days with echo chambers on particularly social media. But the one question that I can ask a hunter where I'll get them to squirmish a little bit, and I do this question because just like politics, people don't tend to completely care about things until it actually impacts them on a very personal level. And so the question that I seem to ask and get a response for is like, well, would you eat a deer with CWD positive? And then, well, yeah, I would. What about your daughter? What about your son? What about your kids? Are you going to feed to them? And then that's where it starts to like, well, no, I don't think I'd feel comfortable doing that. Once you put someone else's, like people can, you can make fun of me all day long, but not my, so-and-so. Like sometimes we actually have our selfless and selfish interests aren't so interdependent. Like we could say we're selfless, but at the end of the day, we care more about other people than ourselves. So like maybe we are more selfless and selfish. That sounds like a weird tongue twister, but that particular question makes it very nucleus for people. And then suddenly they're like, well, no. And then I can kind of zoom back out again. So I don't know. That one's so personal where if I'm going to get a deer and it's positive, first of all, there's no way my wife's going to eat it. And then it begs the question, well, then what am I doing with this deer? Because that, for me, that is like one of the biggest reasons I hunt, short of the experience, that I want the damn meat. And if I kill a deer and I can't eat it, it just feels pretty weird to me that that's the activity I'm engaged in. So
yeah, then
that's why I see the problem. If I can't mitigate it at all, right, then what am I hunting for? To kill animals? Like that's, and if I'm hunting to help exterminate to some degree and like make that solution better, I could probably get on board there a little bit, but I enjoy what our one of the other podcasts on our network says, a word that they helped identify as commensality, which is coming together over a plate of food and sharing a meal together and letting
Mm-hmm.
our other interests dissipate while we focus on this common good of like, we're eating, we're breaking bread, we can bond over this. And to me, that venison is a big part of it. And I think back to when we had the venison party here. All our families came together. We all cooked different meals of venison. It was a damn good time. It's one of my favorite times, actually. So I don't know where I'm going with this other than I want to find a way to shift and move on, but I wanted to hear your thought on that.
Well, I want to, yeah, no, I have some things to say about that, as you might be shocked to find out. I don't begrudge, as we all know, anyone who's paying attention to this, that there has been no documented cases of CWD, a variant of it, which would be Creutzfeldt-Jakob's variant, transferring to people. There's been no documented case of that. Nor has there been a documented case of it moving to some other animal outside of the cervid family. Evidence seems to be that it originated with scrapies and sheep and then moved to deer. So it is zoonic from that standpoint that it can move, right? Where was I going with that? The idea.
You don't need to be concerned like that we're going to get it, but it does feel weird.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm 66 years old. I'm not going to die from a prion disease, and I've been exposed a bunch of times. As careful as I am about it, I handle heads. I handle, even though I'm wearing gloves and doing all. I mean, it's been on me. It's blood or whatever. So I do everything I can to mitigate that risk. Right. I don't begrudge anyone who says I'm going to eat it anyway. And the only thing I'll say is I'll show them a picture or a video of one of the deer that we have that's really sick. And I'll say, well, this deer has CWD. Would you eat that deer? And they say, well, of course not. It looks awful. Like, okay, but you'll eat a deer. I just want to be clear. You will eat a deer that has that disease that is the end result of the disease that it has. And just so that I'm clear on that. And I'm not trying to convince people of otherwise. I'm convinced. I'm just trying to explain to them that there's more to it. As simple as there's nothing wrong with that deer. Well, but if you won't eat that one, and then it goes on to, so make that choice for yourself. The other part of a lot of these kinds of diseases, or these kinds of diseases, I should say, is they tend to have a pretty long trajectory, right? And it's sort of like the lottery. The more often somebody's going to win eventually. Is someone going to get CWD eventually? Well, I wouldn't want to make that prediction at this point. But every year there's more and more experiments every time that it's happening. Making that decision for yourself, right on. Go right ahead. But I don't think anybody in good conscience should be making that decision for somebody else, especially kids who have a longer arc. I know people who are feeding their kids deer that they don't know whether it's got CWD or not. They're not testing because they'd rather not know. Oh, I'm going to eat it anyway. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's but I'm not sure that's, I don't agree with that, I guess is what I would say. So here's the other thing that's happening right now. You may have read, and then we can go on from CWD or more if you want to, if anybody wants to ask me questions about it from your audience. But there's been a lot of talk lately about this genetic resistant deer, that there's a genotype, and it exists. I fully acknowledge that. I am not a geneticist either. And there's been a lot of chatter about it, and there have been people promoting it. Ironically enough, Ted Nugent is one of the people, not that I want to get in an argument with Ted Nugent about this, but Ted Nugent is one of the people who's been promoting this genetic resistant deer, and that we should be developing this more and more. And my question was, well, wait a minute, isn't Ted the one who said that CWD is a hoax? Why in the world, if this is a hoax, why would you now be promoting genetic research and genetic deer that are going to be resistant to something as a hoax? If it's a hoax, then what are you talking about? And that's going on right now, and so I'm having trouble wrapping my head around all that. That genetic resistant genotype exists and it's resistant. Resistance is not that it doesn't get it. It just takes longer to die. And you can see some of the value in that, right? Not my value in it necessarily, but a deer that lasts longer. Okay, let's say it gets it when it's a fawn, but it takes 4 years for it to die. Now all of a sudden it's a 4-year-old buck, and it's a big giant buck. 4-year-old buck around here is a pretty big buck. If it doesn't get it until it's 2, it could be a 6-year-old buck. Well, he's going to get shot, run over, hit by a car, whatever before that, or he might just die of some other cause. So I get that part if what your interest is antlers and you are not worried about the meat. But again, I think we're running this experiment over and over and over. So, but I hope everyone understands, and you can look into this. I don't think that the people who are promoting this would argue with me about this, that this resistant genotype does not mean that it doesn't get it. It's just that it lasts longer when it does. And of course, from my perspective, well, on the other hand, then that deer is on the landscape sick longer, spreading the disease around. So if that's the case, at some point, are we going to have 100%? I mean, is that the end goal for them? Is that we're going to have an extremely high prevalence on the landscape, almost as much as 100%? But hey, that's okay because they all get to be 5 and 6 years old. I have trouble wrapping my head around that one, but I've been thinking about it a lot.
It's wild, Doug. This is like God, I hate to beat a dead deer here, but like, it's just, there's so many questions here because it's a fairly complex topic and there's a lot of opinions about it. And I think we're navigating the conversation here really well. And there's comments coming through on Instagram. And one of them is about like, well, I think it's the quote, I'll read the comment. I think it's more of a hoax that the DNR has put so much fear into people and hunters about contracting it. Well, there's no evidence in over 40 years of human contracting it. Okay, I just want to park that for a second because it would seem so. I'll back up a little bit here to the Ted Nugent comment. The fact that like, well, now you're kind of like showing your hand that maybe you think that it is legit and not a hoax if you're trying to promote this. But somewhere along the way, this industry like does thrive on antlers. Like, and I've said this plenty. Like our logo is the smallest one in the industry. We're literally the only brand that has that. Well, every single where else you look on every magazine cover from in the last 30 years to every grip and grin on social, the things that it's like antler porn. It's literally the things that get people like feeling funny in their bones to go do something, to go itch. It really is. There is industry around antlers. There just is, whether it's decor in a chandelier at a rustic wilderness resort or the deer on these wall, they're pretty to look at. It is a big driver. And my point of bringing up that comment is like, I don't know that the DNR ever tried to scare us out of it. Like, what's the point of that? I can't in my mind think of the end game of the DNR of scaring us about it.
Of advising.
I think
they're just advising.
It's something that emerged.
You probably shouldn't. If it's a sick animal, would you eat a sick cow out of the pasture? Probably not, unless you were starving.
So my point is like, I don't think that anyone's out to get us, but I do think there is industry here and there's more probably, and this is just me. I just am thinking out loud real time. So it's a stream of consciousness here, but it's probably more so that we don't want to see this industry go away because there's revenue in it in droves, even though it's an incredibly small industry. Like hunting is a small subset of outdoors and it's a really small category in contrast, like watches or something else much larger. But that being said, if people, I don't think the DNR would be trying to scare us to stop hunting. I think they're genuinely trying to control something that like maybe they didn't fully understand yet.
I know several of the people, of the biologists, and especially those involved with the deer program, they are deer hunters. They love deer. This is not like some conspiracy to eliminate hunting. I can tell you that. So we've talked about that whole side about the effect on humans. Well, the other part that we talked about some, but let's go back to briefly and maybe we can start to wrap that up. Well, first of all, the job of the DNR, the job of the Department of Natural Resources is to manage and do the best work they can for the natural resources of this state for all of the citizens, not just the 5% that deer hunt. So that's one of the things that's worth noting, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I suppose we'd have, well, but hunters pay for it. Well, well, true enough, if the DNR wasn't out to get us, testing wouldn't be free. That's a good comment from Tony. But my initial reaction in this whole thing was, yes, I'm not eating positive deer, and I'm not feeding it to anybody. But I don't begrudge anybody who does. My biggest concern at the beginning was, well, what's the effect on the resource? What is going to happen? And now that we're beginning to see that happen, it's like it's coming to fruition. My friend Paul Lanier down in the southern part of the county was telling me, I was trying to shoot a doe, Doug, but I didn't see one. And the one that he did was this totally emaciated, completely, I was like, oh, you can put it in for testing? Well, of course I am. But it was, you knew it was, I got $100 that says it's positive. So it's the effect on the resources, the effect on this wonderful animal that we know and love, and the balance of what we really need to be thinking about in terms of our point and our point in the as a part of the conservation efforts of an area. It's just not about the deer. Part of the reason I started killing more deer was for two reasons. One was I was trying to regenerate oak trees, which is really difficult if you have a lot of deer. And then, the other one was to grow bigger bucks. And we were doing the whole deer management thing until about 8 years ago. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. CWD is like knocking at the door. I'm in good conscience as a conservationist. Can't be out here telling people you can't shoot that buck, you can't shoot this buck, you can't do it. And we never had hard and fast rules. You guys probably remember the story about the sombrero and all of that. So we didn't have hard and fast rules. So now, we have the easiest hunting rules that you could come up with on our farm. Shoot a deer take a good ethical shot at a deer that you are going to be happy with. And we will all be happy with you. Now, that doesn't mean you have to shoot the first buck that comes by. I would like you to shoot a buck if they have the opportunity to shoot a buck, but I sure want you to shoot some does. And so it's sort of that balance, and it's not black and white. There's so much gray in this whole thing. So the idea that somehow this is to destroy hunting, well, it's not. It's really to do the best we can for the resource, for hunters, but then for the rest of the community as well. I see our old friend Joe Steffen asked a question here. I'm worried about this. So Joe asked, have you heard of an impact of less government funding at the federal level trickling down to state grants that support a lot of CWD efforts in our area? Or future tactics besides earn a buck? Well, thanks for that, Joe. And I hope you're well. Yeah, I'm concerned about that because the CWD testing and the dumpster program were both partially funded by federal funding. DNR put money into that as well, but they got grants from the federal government that was going to be a part of that. And interestingly, I spent our old buddy Mitch Baker and his wife Liz and I had spent time working with Howard Markline, our senator, and he's not my senator now, but Senator Markline and Representative Tony Kurtz, who both said that they would support more Wisconsin funding going to CWD efforts. And then I'm just calling them out on it. And then, I don't know, they talked to Ted Nugent, I guess, because he came over and did a presentation. And then all of a sudden there wasn't going to be more state funding. So I still pay $1,000 a year for the privilege of having dumpsters for people to put carcasses into. The rest of it was picked up by DNR with these things. But what we were asking for is, why doesn't the DNR, through the funding from the state, and there is funding available, probably less now, but the state has money. They could have put money into this program, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars. So it's going to be interesting, and it concerns me, Joe, that testing, because it's $20+ per deer to get it tested, and it's about $5 or $6. Well, it's actually a little more than that now. The numbers last year went up. It's like $8 a deer carcass to get it to dispose of it properly. Is the state going to be able to step up and do that? Well, hunters don't seem to want to pay more for a tag, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I can tell you this. If I tell people that we aren't going to have a dumpster anymore, there are going to be some upset people about it. Because even people who weren't getting their deer tested were using those dumpsters. So as an old high school friend of mine says, well, it's really nice having, he'd never tested his deer, and then he started testing his deer, but he says, it's really nice having this dumpster here because the carcasses don't all end up on the corner up there off of, that road up there, which told me exactly where he'd been throwing his carcasses before that, right? So this is kind of interesting. So it's convenient. And boy, one of the things we learned, the easier that we make it for people to do stuff like get their deer tested and dispose of a carcass properly, the better off we are. I know people are probably saying, well, but if now it's in the environment, we're never going to get rid of it. You're absolutely right. We're never going to get rid of it. This is about reduction of risk. And those are the ways that we can mitigate it. And we could talk about a whole litany of different diseases that we live with, but we mitigate the risk. We manage the risk, and CWD is a great example of that. That's the best thing that we can do.
To oversimplify, reminds me of marketing. Like you should be doing it year round, and like the ones that are like, well, I think we're good. Like we don't need marketing anymore because everything's been going so great, and so we're going to stop paying for that now. And then you're not going to realize that decision until 6-12 months down the road, and you're like, hey, we need marketing thing again. All our leads dried up. We're not selling anything. Oh, you don't say. Yeah, it should be always on. Like it should be happening all the time, and maybe not at the scale, but like we should be managing this all the time to some degree, so
right?
We can mitigate it. And it feels like there's no problem because we've been managing it.
Well, that's right, and that goes back to that thing we were talking about epidemiology earlier, right? That epidemiologists will say the best when we're doing our job, and everybody's like, what's the big deal? And that was literally what was being said more than a decade ago.
It's tricky. It's interesting. It's like it
really is,
do something. Well, I don't think we need to do anything more. Well, it's not like that. It's not like you do the job and it's fixed. It's not like a leaky faucet, and we plugged it. Well, there's other problems.
Yeah, I like your analogy, and that's the way you think about these different analogies, because I kind of think in analogies also. But that's a great example of it. It's not going to be fixed. It's called ongoing management. It's like we do in the world that I move, still some in the athletic field world. We do integrated pest management on our athletic fields, right? So part of that is we just don't go out and spray the whole damn field for weeds, or we just don't go out and spread insecticide everywhere to kill grubs. We don't put fungicides everywhere. We try to scout and farmers do this too. They scout their fields. They do some stuff on the front end, but then you scout your field and then you're applying what you need to apply in a way that is most effective. And this is an example of that. We can be effective with our management and mitigate things. And I'm concerned about, I don't know, maybe there's some people listening from down in Iowa County and southern Richland, but I've talked to a bunch of them, and I've also been on some properties down there, and I'm looking around going, holy moly, there's oak seedlings here again. And so actually the rest of the biotic community is like, thanks, Mother Nature, for this disease, because suddenly there are fewer deer, and or suddenly over time there are fewer deer. Now all of a sudden the rest of the community is getting a chance to come back a little bit. And I've seen that on a ranch out in Montana that I've been a part of, that I've been consulting would be too strong of a word, but I've had some input into what they're doing. And it's like, what's the best thing we can do here? Our old friend Mitch Baker said one time that I never get this exactly right, but I would rather we did all that we could and find out we did too much than to find out we did too little, and then it was too late. And that's what ended up happening. We went from, we could have a long discussion about what happened in Wisconsin in those first 10 years, and maybe they could have done a better job, and they should have not used the word eradication, because by the time they found out that it was there, the idea of an eradication zone where they just went in and wiped out all those deer, that people were upset about, and I understand. I mean, I would have had the same questions as a landowner, like, you want to come in and do what? Based on
Right.
on 1%, you're gonna have to explain a little bit more to that about that to me, friend. We're gonna, I'm happy to have the conversation, and so I can understand, but because people saw it as wasteful, and this is something, and maybe this will be my last comment about this.
And I have one more follow-up question that came through, so it won't be.
Well, I'm happy to talk about this all night if you want to, but and now when you said that, I completely lost my train of thought.
You railed the train.
That's like a talent.
Yeah, it is. Well,
maybe the question will get you back on.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about longevity, like, did we do too much too soon? It was not forward-looking enough. But the question, how many deer, and there's a tonality here, but how many deer need to keep being tested? What new data do they get from last year that they didn't get 3 years ago? I have a response to that.
And so do I.
Like, when you just think about, like, studying data, like, I run, ad campaigns and network and marketing. So, like, the more data I have, the better the result's going to be, period. And I need as much as possible to identify trends. And the longer you have that data for, the better the trends,
Right.
the better your ability to
You're going to
identify
see
trends
the ebb and
becomes.
flow, right? You're going to see, if we know for a fact that deer numbers are coming down because we're harvesting more, but yet the percentage of deer tested, it has come up. The positives have come up. This is all maintenance, right? Maintenance man is doing his job, maintaining the herd. Hunter's the maintenance man here, and you're seeing numbers go up. You know that the numbers of deer, the census of deer in the area have gone down, but the percentage of deer tested has gone up as positives. That's what you're getting. That's we know we have it, but now we know it's more prevalent. Even in lower numbers, density numbers of deer, it's more prevalent. That's what you know. That's what you get from the testing. Now,
well, that's right. Now, understand this. In Wisconsin, the testing that we're doing is really for hunter knowledge. And yes, they're gathering an amazing amount of data, but they're not really doing anything with it because the changes in law, the loss of Ernebuck, the changes in the gun seasons, where we manage deer with guns, we don't manage them with bows. And those changes, where they made it, the legislature made it illegal to start the gun season before the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Remember we used to have, I killed a big giant buck on October 31st with a rifle on my own land, which is a whole nother discussion. But about why are you regulating what I'm doing on my own property? Well, because it's people's deer. And it's like, yeah, but why are the bow hunters getting to regulate that? When it's clearly not a problem with the number of deer, or wasn't. But anyway, a researcher said this to me. People will talk, and let me back up again. People will talk about, it's a legitimate question. Well, what the hell difference does it make at this point, right? We know we have disease in that area. When they do surveillance testing, like say up north somewhere, they're going to test roadkill deer. They don't test any roadkill deer around us anymore. It's only hunter-killed deer, so that the hunter who chooses to test knows whether that deer is positive or not, and then they get to make their decision from there. They get a replacement tag, all of that. This researcher said to me, data without management is just quantifying misery.
Makes sense.
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Well, it is. Right? It's not informing management, because they're not, are the people who are supposed to be doing the management or putting the management policy forward aren't doing anything about it, because that was all taken away from them. And, so it's not their fault. When he's, well, the DNR did, well, no, the DNR, it's not, don't get me wrong, folks. I'll get right on top of the DNR and bark at them when it's time to do so, but this is not their fault. The tools were taken away because of hunter complaints. And what I find to be really interesting is how many people who have said to me, I was against Ernebuck when they had it, but man, we killed some big bucks then because the herd was suppressed. And the big bucks were on their feet, or maybe they were, because people had to shoot a doe. Well, I got my deer, I don't need another one. And they were bummed that it didn't have antlers, but then they had a buck tag, so they could have. But you can see when you look at, you've got to look at it county by county or region by region and all that. And you'll see that that deer herd number was down. And as soon as Earn a Buck went away and that all the other regulations for management were started, that it just started. It took a couple of years for it to take off again. Then the herd took off again. And now we're seeing in the high prevalence areas, you're seeing it go the other way. I've had some ongoing discussions with a couple of people, very respectful ones who have a different point of view than I have, but they also aren't living with it. They're living in a different area, talking about it sort of theoretically. I'm like, man, I'm living with it. And we're seeing what's happening. It's region by region, right? Deer management needs to be local. It needs to be regional. And say what you will about the DNR, they had a great plan, and had it been continued to be implemented, maybe tweaked, but rather than, let's make it better, it was get rid of it altogether. And then things changed. So we're not using the whole point of, sure, they're gathering data. So it's an incredible data set that we have. And there's been some really cool mapping that's been done with it, but it's hunter satisfaction, hunter tested deer for those of us who do want to get it tested. And somebody might say, well, then you send it in and pay for it yourself. Guess what? I would require everybody who killed one on my place to do that. Then I guess we're going to have to start, negotiating pricing and all that kind of stuff. But data without management is just quantifying misery. And this is like one of those smart things that a smart person said, like, yeah, I get it, So those are the things. There was another question and I didn't see it.
No, I think that was it. That was, I don't think there were any other, the last one was just like they're just kind of echoing what you said. They liked Earn a Buck back in the day.
Yeah.
But the other things that we had kind of slotted a chat about a little bit, and I think we can finally move on for unless someone drags us back into it. But look, it's a complex topic. It's a deep topic. There's a lot of angles to talk about. It is heated. People have beliefs, and it's good to kind of air it out, because it seems like I wouldn't say there's a resurgence, but there's certainly a narrative here, and it's been around for a long time now. Like, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of study, but there's also been a lot of clickbaity bullshit out there where, like, zombie deer, stuff like that. And I just think it's important as hunters to talk about, because we should try to understand these things and what our impact is, good, bad, or indifferent, and what it means. And
it just reminded me there is one thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I've had some conversations with people in the southern part of Richland County. We had hunters come into the sea, because I'm on the County Deer Advisory Council, and these guys came in and said, you got to quit giving out so many doe tags. And, the question, I like to, when people make a statement like that, the first question you say is, well, why? Well, we're not seeing, their deer numbers are less and less down by us, and they're about 10 miles south of us. And I used one of my old pickup lines when I was a young man and single. I said, oh, really? Tell me more. And guy starts going on about it. And he's like, well, 3 neighbors and I haven't shot a doe in 3 years, and we're still not seeing an increase in deer, the herd numbers. And my response was, well, why do you think that is? And they said, well, I suppose CWD could have something to do with it, but you're giving out all these doe tags. We, in Richland County, shoot more or less 3,000 bucks and 3,000 does every year. That number has been sliding over the last few years, but that has been pretty much equal amount of does and bucks, and we do it every year now. It's ever since we took off anything that required people to shoot a doe, right? And we give out a lot of doe tags. We give out 4 doe tags. But I'm like, wait a minute. So you guys are telling me that in your area, and I asked how many acres that was, and they said, well, it's several hundred. And you and your neighbors aren't shooting does, yet you're not seeing an increase in the population. I'm having trouble. So you're thinking that because we're shooting a lot of deer up in the northern part of the county, or there are areas where there are more of them being shot, that somehow 10 miles away that those deer are going to filter. Deer don't move that far, right? You're not going to suddenly increase your herd well, if you let your deer herd blow up, then they'll move back down here. The logic sort of defied me, right? And that was a part of like trying to understand what people are thinking about and what they're going through. So then I said, well, what are some of the other factors? And I've had people say this, well, predators are a problem. We've got coyotes and we've got bobcats and we've got, I'm like, okay. Have we always had coyotes and bobcats? And they're like, well, yeah, okay. So are there more or what? And then habitat changes. And I'm like, wait a minute. Because the habitat isn't as good as it used to be. I was like, in the last 20 years, there has been more money spent on deer habitat improvement in this area. And then they'll bring up EHD. And I'm like, legitimate, right? EHD is very dramatic. If it happens, you get it. But where was the EHD in Richland County last year? And they didn't really have an answer for that. And then the last one was, well, and it's still in effect from all those does that got shot more than a decade ago. And I'm kind of like, boy, I don't know if you look at the deer numbers. So do you believe the deer metrics and and I would tell anybody who's listening, go on the Deer Metrics website, the DNR Deer Metrics website. It's fascinating to take a look at this. After Ernebuck was taken away and that changes, the herd increased. And now it's not dropping off like, because it's county-wide, right? And the southern part of the county is different than the northern part of the county. So deer management has got to be both local, it has to be local, it has to be county-wide, it has to be regional. But yet we keep trying to pound this square peg into a round hole of we got to have the same deer season everywhere across the state to simplify things. We can talk about some of the ideas that I've had for simplification, but so those are, it just doesn't make sense to me that somebody who wants to list predators, EHD, habitat loss, and shooting does from more than a dozen years ago couldn't then consider that a disease that kills population, that kills deer in 2 years, and especially when you have a prevalence up in the 20s, that can't be having the long-term effect. It's just that it's not as dramatic. So
all really good, well-defended points that I wouldn't have been able to have nearly that level of defense against half of those questions. And like, oh, you got me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be raising my voice and shrieking. I'm being emphatic, though.
You're not.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you are.
Okay, good.
But some of the things that you propose, when you talk about so CDAC, for those that don't know, because like we have listeners from all over, but like county deer advisory councils, you're on the board for the CDAC. You talked about some of the things that you had proposed or some things that have come to fruition. Can you kind of go into that a little bit, Doug?
Sure. Wisconsin, we have a peculiar, if not unique, opportunity in Wisconsin. It's called the Wisconsin Conservation Congress, and it's a citizen involvement in proposing regulation. And it's a time-honored tradition. It was started by Leopold and some of his cronies back in the 30s. And that's this idea that there is this Congress. Every county has some representatives. And citizens can also write a resolution. It's akin to contacting your congressman and saying, hey, I got an idea. Well, in our case, there are these citizens' resolutions. And being a member of the CDAC, and when we were talking, and this is going to be interesting because we've got, our CDAC meetings will be coming up, and we pay a lot of attention to public input on it. We pay a lot of attention to the science input on it, and then we have discussions about it, and we try to do what we think is the best thing for the deer herd and for hunting in general, for everybody. But the point is that we're supposed to be representing everybody, not just I represent DMAPs, and on the CDAC there's one who represents the transportation, and there's people who represent forestry, and there's people who represent the industry, and there's people who, it's kind of, and there's an urban person, which is kind of funny because Richland Center is the only urban part of Richland County, and that's a stretch to call it Richland Center. The idea being that management resource management is for everyone. It doesn't matter what that resource is. So we've been trying to tackle this idea of population and mitigating disease control ever since I've been on the CDAC since the beginning. And every year we're able to write notes to the state committee, and then it ends up with the DNR and then the Natural Resources Board. And it's really interesting because you hear a lot about people saying, I wish Ernebuck would come back. And there are a number of CDACs who've been saying, we wish Ernebuck would come back. Well, it takes legislation, so that's a pretty difficult one. But the resolutions are the idea that if they go through the process and they get vetted by the DNR, and then they're presented to the Natural Resources Board, that they can actually become regulation. And that has happened out of our CDAC. I'd like to say it was my idea, but it wasn't. It's just my idea to write it down and send it in. We had a really good discussion about what can we do to encourage people to harvest antlerless deer and get them tested for chronic wasting disease. And so what we came up with 3 years ago was if you harvest an antlerless deer and you get it tested and it comes back positive, that your replacement tag is an either sex tag or another buck tag, right? So it's almost like Ernebuck light, right? Good for the county in which you killed that antlerless deer. So it's not like you can take another buck tag and go up north or something like that, right? So then the idea of it, and as it went through the process, it had to pass. The way it works in the Conservation Congress is that a resolution is introduced on the county level where it gets voted on. And if it passes in the county, then the next year it goes to the state wide and everybody votes on it. And then the year after that, the DNR will take it and they'll make sure that it fits whatever. And they contacted me about it. Are you cool with this? I was like, yeah, I'm really cool with it. Because we were trying to do it on a county by county basis. And they said, we would like to apply this statewide, that anywhere in the state of Wisconsin, if you shoot an antlerless deer and you get it tested for CWD and it tests positive for CWD, you get a replacement tag that is an either sex tag, good for the county in which you shot that deer. Well, the idea is that you're going to encourage testing. And so that surveillance, because the former Natural Resources Board would not allow the DNR to require testing. And we still don't. Testing is 100% voluntary. So this is a way that you can keep that voluntary testing. I never got one tested and I never will. I heard that from people, right? And I'm like, okay, here's an incentive. Rather than a requirement, it's an incentive. And so that passed and it went into effect this year. And it's sort of like the Ernebuck days. We shot a lot of does on my place. And when the Ernebuck thing ended, we had like a stack of those stickers, that was before you could shoot another buck. And it was like, oh, well, I guess we didn't use them. I've not used replacement buck. I mean, if you kill a buck with your buck tag and it's positive, you also get a replacement buck tag, and that's good statewide if you go hunting other places. So that's one that passed. And, it's like, I don't know how significant it is, but it is pretty much the only change in trying to manage population and the disease and, and help that's really been passed in the state in the last 3 years. So, and it came out of our CDAC, it came out of our discussion. I was the one who wrote it and submitted it because it's got to come from an individual. Well, coming off of that 3-year victory, I wrote 2 this year that will be out, and I would ask people to think about them and say whether these are a good idea or not. So there are 2. One of them is...
Before you get to those 2,
okay.
I'm very comfortable asking stupid questions. It's kind of like my job on the show. If I haven't used my buck tag and I shot a doe and then I tested positive, I get a replacement tag and it's either sex, do I now possess 2 buck tags?
Yes, you do.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Okay.
So let's say you shot a buck this year in Richland County and it tested positive, and you shot a doe and it tested positive, you actually start out next year.
So go to the next, so then it doesn't come in.
It's just like Ernebuck. It's good for the year in which you did it and the following year as well.
Oh.
So if you shot a positive doe in Richland County this year, I shot a positive buck, so I got a replacement buck tag. So I start next year with 2 buck tags.
Yeah, there ought to be. Well, that's awesome. That's very interesting. I think that is John Selfley, who we all know on this call, and Doug yourself. I think he manages a team of sales folks. Salespeople are really easy to incentivize in terms of like their behavior based on how you pay their commission. And you'll learn really quick what they're A, good at selling, and B, like what they like to sell based on how they get paid. And it's pretty clear that when there's incentivizations, like you'll kind of flesh out particular behaviors. And I think this one would have a really big outcome of anyone that is interested in shooting bucks or big ones or whatever. They would be incentivized to test, because why wouldn't you want to know? Well, if I got it, I'm going to go get another deer tag. And if you're a meat hunter, it would actually work just the same, because now you get a deer that you feel confident you can eat, and go get another one, stack another doe. So I find that to be like a fairly good incentivization for the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah, it's already been in place for a while that if you shoot a positive deer, you get a replacement tag for the same deer. So the buck, you use your regular buck tag, you shoot a buck, it's positive. Okay, I'm beating that dead deer now too, but it's positive, you get a replacement tag for this year and next. Because you shoot at the 9th day of the gun season, what's a replacement tag do for you? Right? Nothing, right? No. So I threw this deer out, and, if you're discarding it, and, you're being told that, it's not recommended. You can if you want to. Anyway, and so the other one is incentivizing on a statewide basis, and to me, it makes a lot of sense. But it carries over. And that's the other part. One of the objections of Earn a Buck was, well, I had to let this big giant buck go because I didn't have a doe yet. And it's like, okay, let's just say that the law changed tomorrow, and then next year, and we could re-establish Earn a Buck. Well, here'd be the way I would reestablish it, and that is, you shoot a doe in 2025. So you just get a buck tag, right? And you shoot a doe in 2025, you'll have your buck tag for 2026. And because in 2026, you have, if the Earn a Buck came back, you'd have to shoot a doe first. But I shot one in 2025, so it's moving forward. So you're, again, incentivizing the shooting of an antlerless deer in the season before. So if they were ever going to bring it back, that's how I'd bring it back. Give a whole season of opportunity.
Retrofit it, yeah.
Yeah. And so makes nothing but sense to me. And then it does carry, and like now it does carry over as well. Because a replacement doe tag in Richland County and a lot of the counties in the farm zone, it's like, well, I don't really need that. I can buy another one. And or like in Richland County, we've been given 3 or 4 with every license. We don't seem to kill more deer, but I know some people who've filled them all. And then you can keep buying them. So that's part of it. So I've proposed 2 things going forward. The first one is, and I think gun hunters will be happy about it, because there's been a lot of angst about gun hunters not getting the opportunity. I'm going to go to this question first. Earn a Buck for certain counties or for statewide? I think it would only make sense to do it in areas where population is an issue. Not to do it statewide. This is one of the things that I will also say is that I don't pretend to know how we should be managing the deer and whatnot in northern Wisconsin, because they have a whole different set of circumstances than we do, including wolves and habitat issues, and it's a whole different thing. But in areas where you have, that's why I think that management needs to be regional. We've kind of in some ways broken it down too far to countywide, when we used to have these DMUs that were more based on watersheds and geographically, but that got changed when we had the deer czar. The idea of the CDAC makes a lot of sense to me, but you could also do it based on the DMU. If you were going to do Earn a Buck, it would only make sense that it would be applied in areas where it's agreed to by the CDAC and the DNR and the NRB agreed. So to answer that person's question, which is a good one. And I think that was one of the objections to Earn a Buck too, that people were saying, oh my God, they say there's too many deer in all these areas, where I don't think that's the case. Bow hunters tend to not think that because they spend more time in the woods. Gun hunters like to, there's a lot of casual gun hunters, right? That they go out and they hunt their opening weekend, and that was sort of the tradition, right? That you went out, you hunted opening weekend. You might go back out after Thanksgiving or something, and that's when people talk about deer hunting traditions. That's some of it. Well, that was also in a time like when I was a kid where there were very few deer in Southwest Wisconsin. So that's how we would apply that. So the two proposals that'll be only on the Richland County Conservation Congress this year, and I will be at the meeting and I will have to present them since I'm the one who wrote them. The first one is real straightforward, that buck hunting will be allowed during the gun season. Buck hunting will be allowed during the holiday hunt of the gun season, right? We have the holiday hunt where you can only shoot does. If we hear one thing from hunters, that's one of their biggest complaints. Why can't we hunt bucks during the holiday hunt too? They kind of get the concept of the antlerless hunt, that 4-day antlerless hunt. But my kids are, my family's around. We've got this opportunity, and then there's the complaints of the gun hunters that they aren't getting. That there are fewer bucks by the time that they get their crack at them. Well, let's give them another crack at them. Yeah, it's over the holidays, but so is the 9-day gun season, right? I mean, that's a part of why.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it is.
But that's also a part of why the hunter participation has gone down, is because the gun season goes over the Thanksgiving holiday. And I don't know what it's like for you guys, but it's not really easy for me to, even though I live right by the farm, for me to say, you know what, I'm going to take a couple more days off here while the family's around and go deer hunting.
Yeah.
Right.
The people who in my family who deer hunt are like, yeah, let's go. And the ones who aren't, including my wife, kind of go, excuse me?
You've been gone for the last several days. Like, you better get your ass home for this dinner.
Yeah, well, and so there you go, right? So, and they say, oh, you got 9 days. Well, no, you don't. Not really. I mean, in effect, you do not.
Some people do.
You might
Some
get
people
3 or
don't.
4 if you're lucky.
Yeah. Those extra days come at a high cost. Let's just put it that way.
Well, exactly. But that period of time between Christmas and New Year's tends to be kind of a lull. I don't know, dead. But it's a lull. So what a great opportunity. We've been able to. I've gotten people out. It's a little upsetting to me at times when I get it. I've had people say to me, well, I'd go out, but I mean, you can only shoot a doe. And it's like, yeah, okay. So that's one of the things, that buck hunting would be allowed during the holiday hunt. So that's pretty straightforward. And if that passes in the county, it'll go to statewide next year. And then the other one is, the background is pretty simple. In the farmland zones, which is really the southern two-thirds of the state, every CDAC gives at least one antlerless tag. The problem is it's county specific. We have an increase coming, or proposed at least, for licenses. Well, maybe to soften that blow a little bit is to say, along with your buck tag and whatever your CDAC says, we're going to give you a doe tag that's good all the way across all the farmland zones, not just specifically to your county. So that means I hunt most of the time in Richland County. I can also go to Iowa County, and I don't have to go down there and buy a tag. Which is one of the things that people object about. It's like, I got to buy a tag if I'm going to go and hunt somewhere else. Well, pay a little more for a license.
Usually it's a literal last minute too, by the way. I'm like, shit, I didn't get a tag for this county. Like, I'm going out with a different buddy, and I'm like, I'm on the truck on the way there, like on the DNR side of my phone, trying to figure out how to buy a tag before I get into the stand.
Well, and it helps to keep honest people without, and then all of a sudden you're an outlaw, right? And so, hell, I'm on the other side. I mean, the back of our farm is the county line. I mean, our farm is in Richland County, and I own 30 acres in Sauk County. I have literally shot deer from Richland County that were in Sauk County, and thankfully, I always take get one Sauk County tag because I have that situation. But I can't go to. Why should somebody, like a friend of mine, comes down and hunts with us from up north, and he's like, "What county do I have to buy a tag for? Doe tag for?" In this case, he wouldn't have to. He's in the northern farmland zone. It wouldn't be for the way up north zones where they're having we're having the population issues and all that. So kind of goes back to that theme of management should be local and regional, and then, in the farmland zones.
Do you think there's cleaner, better data when tags are purchased via county? Because then the DNR knows that this deer was shot in that county because that's where the tag was purchased and it was registered? Or do you think they could clean up that data even if it was region specific for, like, I bought the tag for this southern region farmland zone, and then when you go to tag, you have to denote what county? Like, could we still get that? I'm just wondering, I don't know if there is any implications there or not.
Well, I don't think there is, because when you register your deer,
you still have to call out that.
You have to say where you got it, right? And so, hey, I'm from Adams County and I was hunting down in Richland County and I got it at this spot. I mean, that technology has gotten better and better, right?
I'm just trying to figure out the reason why they would want to keep it complicated at the county level.
Well, there isn't a good one. There isn't a good one from what I can.
Maybe it could be a little bit of revenue if I got to buy a tag for Waukesha County and Jefferson County, and every time I want to go hunt a new county, well, now there's more revenue events happening to get those tags for those counties if they exist. So, like, maybe there's a reason there. And I'm not against paying, because, like, I understand there's a cost for these things and it's supporting the resource. So it's not all bad. I'm not that pissed about it, but it is at some point, like, shit, how like, that's wild. I live in the state. I want to hunt this area. I should just be able to go hunt it with the tags.
I should be able to go hunt it, right? Especially if there are doe tags available in that county. How about you give me one? And then if you live in that county, you can, in the CDAC, still have the power to say, in Richland County, we would reduce the number of doe tags that we give out in the CDAC. I would think. I'm not speaking for the CDAC right now, but I am speaking for myself, and I tend to be the guy who promotes more, not fewer, antlerless tags. Although there are a couple of others who agree with me 100%, but it's a cleaner process. And so that's what the aim of that is, and it is encouraging, because you can still go buy another tag if you want.
And this is all iterative too. Like, we could go down this path and find that we can make something else better, or it made something else worse. Like, you can't predict everything here. We're humans. We're fallible. Like, we don't have everything figured out. We can only see so far down the road. We can only do the best we can with the tools that we have at that time. There might be some really great tools that emerge in the next 20 years. They're like, why did we do that 20 years ago? Because it didn't exist.
Right.
They sucked. I don't know. Like, it's just, people need to be more forgiving of other human beings trying to do their damn job to the best of their ability. Like, it's just forgiving sometimes out there.
Yeah, and it's, Bob Dylan once said it used to go like that, now it goes like this. He was talking about one of his songs and how he had changed it, right?
Yeah.
It used to go like that, now it goes like this. Well, and then somewhere in, I don't know, what was it, in the 90s, where if you changed your mind about something, you were a flip-flopper, as opposed to, oh, look, there's new information, and here's a new, and you know what? It's not written in stone. We can try it. And then let's adjust, or
Changing
maybe
your mind
throw it out throw it out the window if you want. But it's, anyway.
You can change your mind. It's a hell of a thing to be able to do as a human. It's one of our great strengths. You can change your mind about things that should not be viewed as a negative.
I agree. So, any other questions out there about?
What's that? Billy Mannymore ball busters.
Well, at the end of the day, I think that we all want to do the best thing that we can to have the best thing for the deer herd, the best thing for hunting, the best thing for the future is where the soup gets made is how do we do that?
Yeah.
And so those are the discussions that we have.
And Paul Campbell, who hosts the Turkey Season podcast on our network, he
I know Paul.
He's a good dude. A couple of years ago, he went viral on our TikTok when he was a guest on our podcast to some ridiculous degree, and he got beat the shit out of in the comment section. But his response was one that I'll take with me forever, and I really learned a lot from it. He's like, Eric, it just tells me that they're passionate about this and they care about it. That's why they're feeling like they need to say something and they're upset. It's because they care. So I'm going to listen and respond. And he's like, it's not bad that they're voicing these opinions. It just shows that they care. So if anyone's voicing an opinion and it doesn't happen to align with yours, the common denominator is that we both care about this thing. And that's important to consider, especially when you're dealing with these things, whether you're at an actual like CDAC, county advisory meeting, and you're trying to be heard in a populace of people in a small room where there's, a bunch of angry freaking people that are trying to voice their opinions. They care about something. So listen,
Exactly. And we do that. I had someone say, well, we don't come to the CDAC meeting because you don't listen to us anyway. I'm like, yeah, that's completely wrong. We listen to you, but you're not the only thing. Your opinion isn't the only thing that we have to consider. When you come in with an opinion, will you lay out to us what that's based on? And I've had more people than I can count. It's just the way I feel about it. Okay, well, that's not really a logical argument. And some of it is like they're agreeing with me, and I just feel like we should be able to, and I'm like, well, that's not. There needs to be some thought process behind it, rather than this is just what I think.
A lot of it's
why do you
explain
to me why you think that way? What evidence? What data? What anecdotal evidence? All of that. I'm happy to listen to it, and I'll always reserve the right to change my mind.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that we covered quite a bit. I don't know if we got to everything. I think it's good dialogue, and we're happy to have these conversations going forward as things change, because they will. You're welcome here in studio. We're happy to come to you if it can make sense, or we can do these virtually. And we've had the DNR asked to be a guest on the podcast a number of times. We did invite the DNR here last year. It was just really interesting to have their very official vehicle pull up in front of my house. I was like, boy, if you weren't invited here, I'd be a little nervous that something's going on. And I was like, you want a drink? He's like, I'm in uniform. I'm working. I cannot partake in an alcoholic beverage. I'm like, all right, understood. Let's get at this. So just in general, we're happy to be. We understand that we do have a voice in this space to some degree. People do listen. So we want to have good, healthy conversations and flesh some things out, whether they're fun conversations, informative, educational, controversial. That's what a podcast is. And we happen to have a podcast that's about deer hunting. And it's great to be able to connect with folks like you, Doug, that are not too far from us, that are a really great voice in this space, in this particular subject matter. Nonetheless, it's really great that you've made yourself available to hang out with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to be there here. And I also, looking at the clock, I guess we're kind of approaching the end of all this, but I would close with, at least if that's where we're at, is closing about it. I posted something recently about a project that we're doing with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And it's a grassland restoration, and actually it's going to be a hickory savanna of all things. You think of savannas, you think of oaks, but I posted something about it, and I purposely said, this is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partners Program project, which means I got to put a lot into it, and then they're going to put into it also. So some of it's they're working with me, but I pay for. I did all this work on the front end, and then they lend some expertise, and people challenged me on it and said, why in the world, in the position that we're in this country financially, and everything that's going on in Washington, why in the world should the average taxpayer pay for work to be done on Doug Duren's farm to improve his hunting? And I said, well, first of all, good question. Second, and that's, I set it up to get that question, right? And then the rest of the answer was this. For $1 spent, there are all these multiple benefits, right? And on the front end, we're putting time and money into it as well. But as this project gets completed, it's songbird habitat, it's pollinator habitat, it is wildlife habitat, it's game species habitat, it's water quality, improvement of water quality, it's erosion control. There's carbon sequestering involved because these are going to be all permanent native species. Aesthetically, it's cool. So multiple benefits for everybody, right? The water in our stream runs downhill. As you guys know, I'm very close to the top of the watershed. So that water is pretty damn clean coming through our place. And water, everybody's downstream. So that's one of the things. So then the next question was, Well, are you required to, in fact, I think they said you should be required to allow access. And I said, well, if a requirement for a private land conservation program was that public access was a part of it, that would be at the end of all of the private land conservation programs, or they would be greatly reduced because people just aren't going to sign up for that.
Right.
And one guy who I've had a really great ongoing exchange with, and man, when we were at each other, and what we've had offline now, and we've come to some common ground too, because we're both like having an exchange of ideas, right? But he's like, well, that's fine with me. That would go away. That funding, then the government isn't spending that. And I was like, okay, well, then that becomes a question or a discussion about what's the purpose of government. Should it be encouraging this kind of stuff? Should it be helping to fund it? And we're talking about literally a few $1,000s here.
Yeah, we've already lost this in payroll in this conversation. Like, if you
well,
think of it that way, like the people spending their time griping.
Well, and so, but it's a legitimate question. And then I said, no, I do not allow unrestricted public access. But one of the things I learned from Leopold and the Riley Game Cooperative that we are is that I have an opportunity, I would even say an obligation, to allow some level of public access on my property. And I do that through our program, Sharing the Land, and I have a list of cooperators, people who are granted access. And yes, some of them are guys like Steve Ranella or somebody else from Meat Eater, but you know what? The first thing that Steve Ranella and his kids will say to me when they show up to go turkey hunting is, what work do you need help with here, Doug? That's just a part of their DNA. And other people, I mean, I've been contacted by people who said, my kids think I'm a loser as a hunter because I never killed a big giant buck. Will you help me kill a big giant buck on your property? And I'm like, you need to have a different conversation with your kids. and no, right? But this whole idea of contribution to conservation that's mutually beneficial, that's cooperative, that's community, and I see it as an opportunity that I have, and to a degree, I feel like it is an obligation. So when I had this discussion with this guy about access, I told him, that's what I'm doing. I can't let everybody on. I mean, I guess I could, but the VPA programs are out there. Because that was sort of the other side of it. Oh, all taxpayers are paying to rent private land so that anybody can access it. Is that fair too? So, those are the kinds of discussions, and it just ends up being a general discussion about, well, what's the purpose of government? What's the purpose of conservation? Does this make sense or not?
I mean, I don't know the purpose of government. I'm not going to try to answer that on this podcast. But the purpose of conservation, I probably won't answer that either. Not that you're asking me to, but I just feel inclined to say, going back to touching the land and that experience I had with my daughter, and many more of them for that matter, like the Christmas tree stuff we do with the Waukesha County Land Conservancy is also another special time of year for us, where we are helping restore a property by cutting down trees that we end up using for Christmas trees, and we donate a lot of we donate I don't say shit ton of money, but like we pay way more than what you should pay for a Christmas tree to help donate to that program through the Waukesha County Land Conservancy. And to that end, this land is a resource that, like, if it goes away, we don't get it back, and B, as human beings, we're just naturally drawn to it. When you're inside, you want to go outside or bring things. How many people have plants in their houses? Like, how many people have pets in their house? We keep bringing outside things inside, and we strive to go outside in the world. There better be a park near our house. There better be some hiking trails. Boy, I'd love to go mountain biking and cross-country skiing and hiking, and I want to go rock climbing. I want to go canoeing and kayaking and paddleboarding. We're always seeking these outdoor things. Like, everybody wants to use property and land to recreate in some way, shape, or form, whether that's hunting or otherwise. And therefore, we should do whatever we can do to practice conservation, because we all love it. And it's a part of our fiber and soul and being to be outdoors. It just is. Now, I've seen kids wear shirts like "I want to stay inside for recess," and that might be true, in some generations. But at the end of the day, like, man, there's something said about just having the sun hit your eyelids, on a nice hot day, or breathing in crisp cold air, and what that does to your soul. Like, being outside is just so good for us, and we just seem to know that intuitively, intrinsically, we understand that. We can't even explain it. So conservation is a big damn deal to us, and it should be to everybody. And however you can practice it, it's worth doing even the minimum amount you possibly ever could do, because it all helps.
Yeah, and conservation never sleeps, right? I mean, there's just seems like something's happening all the time. This is just a funny anecdote, but I was talking to a person who out in New York State who's dealing with real big overpopulation of deer in an area, and they said that it seems that it's not a government official or anything, right? It's just a dude out there, and he said this to me. They have 100 deer per square mile of habitat, and he said, and what I have found is that 100 deer per square mile of habitat. He said, what I have found is that trying to manage deer with recreational hunting in the way that we are is about as effective as managing them with vehicle collisions. And actually, with vehicle collisions, he said the season never ends.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Watch out for deer. Drive safe. Yeah. That's the most Wisconsin thing ever. Watch out for deer.
Watch out for deer.
Yeah. Thanks again, Doug. And just, can you make sure you tell people where to find Sharing the Land and anything else that you're involved with that you ought to be drawing attention to? What we got here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm lousy at plugging stuff, I guess, but I do have my buddy Chris Crafted hat on, and if you want, he's a leather worker who's done some fantastic work for us. Sharingtheland.com. At some point in 2025, it's going to become a nonprofit, so I guess that will become sharingtheland.org at some point, but www.sharingtheland.com. It's at Sharing the Land on Instagram, and I do all of my posting from Instagram, and my Instagram is at Doug Duren, and that last name is Duren, not like Duran, the 80s hairband, or champion boxer of that period of time. So at Doug Duren,
a moment where my heart dropped. I was like, "Oh shit! I hope I didn't spell it wrong."
No, you did. You spelled it perfectly, Eric. And
to mess that kind of stuff up. It's very embarrassing for me.
No, and those are the two places. There's a Sharing the Land website, and believe it or not, it's sharingtheland.com. And there's also a Doug Duren website, and that is also dougduren.com. And those are the best places to contact me and see what we're doing with Sharing the Land. And we're interested in people's thoughts. We're interested in their ideas, and we're really interested in their involvement.
Cool.
Awesome.
Good. And I know that, you have an open mind and ear for that stuff. So that's great. Thanks again, Doug. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. It's been too long, fellas.
Certainly.
Yeah, there'll be hopefully some more in-person stuff here one of these days. There's lots of events that go around in the state that I'm sure we'll cross paths on. But we'll call tonight for this and get it up into podcast land soon. But everyone that tuned in, we appreciate you listening too. Thanks
a lot. We'll see.